coming, the sun's zooming in, meltdown expected, the wheat is good there, engines stop running, but I have no fear, 'cause London is drowning. I live by the river.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the By the Minute Arsenal podcast. It's like we've never been away, really, given a scrappy win last week, and we have to talk about a defeat this week, unfortunately, but we'll save the depression for a moment or two. I'm glad to say at least I've got the usual suspects alongside me, so good evening, Pete.
Hello, Matt. Back from holiday with a bump.
Yeah, very much. Bump is the understatement, isn't it, a bit? And we also have Matt V. Hello, Matt.
Evening. 2 weeks. 2 weeks was all it took for us to have to do one of these podcasts. Incredible.
It's in some ways sort of pleasantly familiar, but that in itself is a problem, I think. Yes, I'm of course Matt H as well, to guide us through the next 25 minutes or so of complaining, I imagine, amongst other things, but we'll get to that in a second. First of all, I have to make a very quick apology. I had a big coughing fit last week. I thought I'd muted it. What I did is it meant the other two didn't hear me, but of course it was still recording. So when I listened back to it, I was mildly embarrassed by that, so I should apologise about that. But that is as nothing compared to what Arsenal should be apologising about. So let's get on to it then. So Saturday evening, Arsenal went to Stoke. Traditionally, we have to talk about this as being a difficult trip, but of course last year it was actually a 4-1, or last season, because it was only in May, it was actually a 4-1 Arsenal win. There's a lot to talk about here. Arsenal lost 1-0 basically, is the headline, but there's obviously lots to talk about in terms of Arsenal's performance at the back, in terms of what the midfield were doing as well. There was some talk about that, and indeed the chances that weren't taken. Although there was a bit of bad luck in there as well, which I think is worth mentioning. I started writing a list of things and realised it was going on and on, so I want to I'll refer back to that as and when necessary. I can't remember who we started with last week, but let's start with Matt this week. Is there anything in general you'd like to say about this particular performance? And I use the word advisedly.
It's just, I feel like we could play back any of a number of podcasts we did last year after defeats. It's pretty familiar. I feel like we could talk for half an hour on the team section, because I don't know what suddenly happened in our defence, why nobody plays in their actual position. I mean, Oxlade-Chamberlain's gone from not being, worthy of a contract last season to all of a sudden being so important we have to squeeze him in at all costs. And, we'll risk sending him for free last summer. Kolasinac was signed as a left wing back, but he's now stuck at centre back. Bellerin's been moved to left wing back. And Monreal's, the main centre back. But I know Wenger said he wasn't convinced by his central defence, but none of this would be a surprise, because he knew Koscielny would be suspended for the first 2 games. He knew Mustafi would come back late from the Confederations Cup. He clearly knew he was planning on selling Gabriel, and doesn't appear to have a lot of faith in Callum Chambers, who would surely be a better option at centre-back. So I just feel he could have been so much more prepared for this, but as it is, we're sort of cobbling together a defence, and it's not working at all so far.
It's not, is it? And it's interesting that Rob Holding, when I saw he wasn't in the starting 11, I wased hugely surprised, but then he wasn't even in the squad, which I thought, after one poor game, that I'm not cheerleading for him, but it just seemed a bit of a ridiculous, when you obviously need some people in there who know what they're doing, and on a relatively small sample size, he did seem to show he knew what he was doing for a number of games last season. So I thought that was an odd one as well. Okay, well, team selection was certainly one of the points I had down. Pete, anything you'd like to add to that particular topic?
Well, it was I think, as you say, it was the defensive team selection that was the main concern, wasn't it? As you said, Holding, I wondered if Holding was injured, so not being in the squad, because although he had a bad performance last week, I feel he should have been in there, and I don't really understand why Mertesacker was on the bench. If he's fit enough for the bench, surely you should be starting him. And then maybe you can play Monreal either on the left side of the 3 centre-backs, where he's much more comfortable, or as the left wing back, because we don't have a left wing back, and so it's got to either be him or Kolasinac. So I don't understand why when cobbling together a defence, we're sticking with our best left wing back in the centre of a three-man defence. Very odd.
Very odd indeed. I've got to say, I've got all my notes, so I'm wondering the best place to start with it is. I mean, the game itself, in terms of the narrative of the game, I don't think we need to go into. We've got some incidents we can pick out, but essentially, Arsenal had all the possession at the thick end of 80%, I think, which in an away game is bordering on ridiculous even for Arsenal, particularly to then not score. Hesse, I don't know, scored early in the second half for Stoke. Yet another early goal conceded in a half, which I think we talked about a lot last season. It seemed to happen quite regularly. Happened just 2 minutes into the second half on this occasion, and then Stoke did enough to hold on, and we had our chances, but didn't really look like threatening hugely a lot of the time. Did have the ball in the net, that was disallowed. Let's talk about that actually as a particular instance. So 2 incidents really to note. So let's start with that one first. The Lacazette goal that was not a goal because he was deemed offside. It was very close. Matt, any thoughts on that one being disallowed? Was it just one of those things? I'm not. It was so close. I'm not sure we can criticise too much. Well, although we are of course allowed to if you want to.
Yeah, it was strange because some pundits were saying it's onside. Then Graham Poll was very certain in himself. But I mean, I don't think the linesman has telescopic vision that he's managed to see Lacazette as half a toenail offside. But I don't know what the rule is on how much of your body has to be offside. If it is just any part of your body, then I guess he probably is. But I think 99 times out of 100, that's probably given onside if any advantage is given to the attacking team. It was a great finish, but I don't know. I guess maybe it is just about the right decision, but it did not stop me feeling hard done by.
No, and neither should it. I mean, for what it's worth, I thought it was fine, and it was so close. I think benefit of the doubt should have gone his way, and it was a great finish. Not that it mattered in the end. The other issue then, which I must admit I sort of overlooked at the time, and it was only at half-time, so it was Bellerin being taken out by, it was Diouf, I think, wasn't it, in the box for a potential Arsenal penalty. Now, none of the Arsenal players really seemed to appeal from what I recall. I mean, I was doing it by the minute, so there was a bit of typing going on, so I may not have been, I may have missed something on the screen at the time. But Pete, any thoughts on that penalty shout? Obviously, we have the benefit of hindsight now. Do you think they should have given it the time?
I think everyone's too scared to appeal for a penalty now, and the fear that they'll get a yellow card. Seriously, that if you fall over in the penalty area, whether you've been fouled or not, you're best not to appeal and just hope the referee gives it, because if you appeal, he thinks you're trying to con him and will give you a card. Seriously. So I think that's almost, well, certainly if the player himself does it, and obviously the player is the only one who really knows whether he's been touched or not.
Well, it's an interesting approach. What did you think? It's an interesting idea, I should say. We might come back to this later on in the season. What did you think about the actual, without the benefit of hindsight, do you think it should have been given or not, or was there enough sort of wriggle room for the ref?
I mean, I'm not going to moan about decisions. It's one of those ones where if the ref sees it, the ref sees it, and if he doesn't, he doesn't, and whatever. I wouldn't mind either way if it was a boot was on the other foot, as it were.
Well, we'll hold you to the moaning about decisions thing throughout the season. Although actually, I don't think we will. That would be terribly unfair because I have a feeling there might
go ahead.
There might be plenty more.
To that one.
All right. Well, that's fair enough.
One of my prediction scores, obviously.
Well, well, yes. None of us did particularly well this week, but we'll come to that later on. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. I mean, some points I thought of. The crossing I thought was pretty terrible. I thought some players got into very good positions, but the crossing was just really poor. Welbeck, we talked about him before, but there's just no. It's not poor decision making as much as no decision making, I think, which I find difficult with him. Anything else you'd like to say, positive or negative? You can find any positives. I mean, I thought Oxlade-Chamberlain did look pretty good at times, I have to say, and I haven't always been a big fan of his, but I thought he looked lively at times. Matt, anything you'd like to note about the game? Any of those sort of individual player performances?
I just feel like we must be one of the only teams that when we give away the ball on the halfway line, you just pretty much guarantee we're going to concede. I mean, we have so many players bombing forward that when Xhaka gives away that ball, that shouldn't automatically lead to us conceding. But Ozil sort of jogs with his man back. Monreal doesn't know where to play offside or not and ends up doing neither. And it just seems so easy the way we give away goals. And after we gave away that goal, I mean, we had loads of possession, but it was just so slow and side to side, endlessly. We didn't ever look that great. And I agree with what you say on Danny Welbeck. He must be possibly the greatest striker ever, who just can't finish. It's just incredible how clumsy and how incapable he looks in front of goal. But up until that point, he looks so dangerous. I don't know what happens there. And I don't think that's something he's ever going to learn.
It's a shame because on his day he can be very very useful, but yeah, maybe there's a confidence issue there. I don't know what's going on, but I think a lot of them could have confidence issues at the moment. I don't think Rob Holding is the only one who might be having those kind of problems. Something actually that occurs to me. Sorry, I was going to come to you, Pete. Go on.
Well, you can come to me later if you like, but just to mention that kit is really horrible.
Yeah, I don't like the collars. I said it on. I think they're they're too small. I think they should be either bigger or not there at all. And the colour is. It's
just the gets me, and the pink logo. No.
Well, there we go. Yeah. So there was really nothing at all to enjoy about the performance. You can't even think. Well, at least they look nice, because that wasn't true either. Well, Pete, I was going to ask you the same kind of thing there. Anything in particular you want to talk about any individuals? And perhaps, and we can all talk about this, the substitutions, if there's anything in particular, because I know there's some criticism made about those, about if you're going to put Giroud on, don't take Xhaka off, even if he hasn't been particularly good, for example. Don't take Lacazette off if you're looking for a goal. Anything on that, or any other points in the game?
Well, I'll pick up on what Matt was saying about the, if we lose ball in midfield, it shouldn't be that easy for the opposition to score, and you shouldn't almost be expecting the opposition to score, which we seem to be. I think that's again down to, it's a team selection before that game seems odd, that if you've got a rickety defence already that you're patching up together, to then play a very adventurous midfield, which Ramsey and Xhaka are together. Ramsey is often, not in midfield. I think that's a bit of a mistake, that maybe you should be playing a slightly more solid midfield when you're playing a patched up defence, maybe.
Yeah, makes sense. And anything, Matt, about specifically about the substitutions, actually, just because I thought it was interesting that was discussed afterwards, because of course the reason I'm mentioning it is, of course, it relates directly back to the manager.
Yeah, it's the second game in a row where we've just ended the game with no system in particular and just every attacking player possible. It did seem strange to take Lacazette off. Seems even stranger that when you bring Giroud on, you don't cross until pretty much the last minute of the game, in which he probably should have scored from there. We seem to do the same subs pretty much every week. Who did we bring on? Walcott, Iwobi, and Giroud?
Yeah.
Walcott never really seems to do anything. Giroud always sort of makes a nuisance of himself, but he relies on the service. And when he got involved, the first thing he did was flick it round to I think it was Welbeck. Iwobi didn't really do a lot. I don't know what the thinking was. It feels like you're going to spend so much money on Lacazette in the summer. The time to take him off is not when you're 1-0 down and looking for a goal. It goes back to the signings we've made, I guess. We're not playing Kolasinac in the position where he's going to thrive. We're now taking Lacazette off when we need a goal. It all just seems to be a lot of bizarre decisions going on that nobody can really explain.
Yeah, and something, again, some of the notes I made, I didn't do the actual maths, but we've only been, in our two games, we've only been leading in them for, a total of about 10 minutes. None in this game, and a very small amount at the beginning and the end of the Leicester game. That's not what title-winning sides do. They get a game, they get a game by the throat, they take a lead, and they hold on to it. That's what Arsenal used to do in the old days. And it just seems that if you're always playing catch-up, as we did against Leicester, ultimately successfully, but we didn't really look like ever pulling it off against Stoke. To me, that's a problem. Something else. We have this optimism at the start of the season, but ultimately, it's only a few weeks ago that the whole season finished. We've essentially got the same personnel, we've got the same manager, we've got the same system in place. Are we foolish to expect anything different to happen when essentially we've got the same setup? Pete, would you be expecting the transfer market to be dipped into between now and whenever it closes in a week or so?
No, not unless we can sell some people, and I don't think we're going to be able to do so. No.
All right, Matt. What changes would you make given that? Maybe you think we will dip into the market, but what changes can we make in the next week? Basically, I suppose is what I'm asking.
Yeah. I mean, we'll probably be stronger when we have all our centre backs available, but we probably still think in midfield we probably need someone else, because I don't think anybody wants to see Coquelin start in. You can't rely on Jack and Ramsey to play every game, and as Pete said, you need another option who's going to be a bit more solid. I know rumours of centre backs have been thrown around, but I can't see us at all spending 60 million on Van Dijk in these last few days. So I think that probably will be it. And we seem to be unable to sell anyone. Jenkinson's gone on loan. I'm not sure how much that does help with wages, because I assume we're still paying quite a bit of it. Joel Campbell, Debussy, Gibbs. It's just so many players on high wages that don't appear to be going anywhere. So I think that probably is it for our transfer business, which I don't know, if we're going to perform like that is a depressing thought.
It is, isn't it? The next few months without any new blood coming in. I've had enough of talking about the Stoke game, particularly, I think, because I think we've covered everything.
It's going to get better.
No, absolutely. But we'll see. There is one topic I would be very interested in both of your opinions on, though, which is kicking the ball out when the opponent is injured. Now, it came up in a big way twice, I think it was, wasn't it, on Saturday afternoon. On both occasions, Arsenal had the ball, a Stoke player was down, and of course the crowd are going on, but I think particularly the second example, I might have this the wrong way around, but even the Stoke players were sort of urging Arsenal to kick the ball out, even though it was fairly obvious there was no head injury there. Now, having said all that, it could of course easily happen the other way around at some point. What do we think? I wrote in the commentary that I was doing for By the Minute, it needs to be sorted out. Either the referee tells you to get it out, or you don't have to at all, and people should just suck that up. Pete, any thoughts on where we are at the moment and where perhaps we should be?
Oh, just stop it. Just carry on and just play the game unless the referee tells you to stop. And I just can't believe we kicked it out on either of those occasions. It was pointless and stupid. Only done because the crowd booed so much. And, I don't care if teams play on against us, if someone's down injured. That's what the game's about, isn't it? There's no head injury, and it should only be about the referee stopping the game. Partly the problem is we're so slow when that happens to take advantage that it gives the time for the crowd, for the players to get really edgy about the whole of the crowd booing. If they just got on with it and ignored it, would be better off. Very frustrating. Just stop it.
All right, Matt. Anything else to add?
No, I agree. I think the first one, the only thing wrong with Diouf was a complete lack of fitness.
Yes.
He sort of done a bit of a sprint forwards and then was rolling around, and we kicked it out. And the second one is even more annoying. We're 1-0 down with, 5 or 10 minutes to go. Definitely shouldn't be kicking it out. And I mean, to pay any attention to Stoke of all places for booing people was particularly mad.
Yes, the fact it was Stoke did stick in the throat a bit more than it might do normally. But all right, well look, we'll leave that there because we don't need to dwell on that anymore. And as Pete says, hopefully things will get better and we'll have much more pleasant games to chat about. So we'll move on then. A quick look at the other Premier League scores that we are particularly interested in. United played very well and beat Swansea 4-0. What else do we see? Liverpool, our next opponents, beat Palace at home just by the 1-0. And Spurs and Chelsea played yesterday, and Spurs already that chat about is Wembley going to be a problem for them will be amplified because they lost 2-1 at home to Chelsea, and Man City play tonight. I also wanted to mention briefly the ins and outs because we talked about the transfer fee. We also I wonder if anyone had any words on Gabriel going for apparently 10 million quid to Valencia. It seems a slight shame, but he never seemed to quite fit in. But he seemed to, put the work in, put the effort in when he was called upon. Matt, any thoughts about him leaving?
Yeah, he always seemed to put in a good a good shift. I didn't think you could buy anyone for 10 million anymore, so it seems really cheap, especially when we're so short of centre backs. We have to play left backs at centre backs. It seems strange, but I don't know. I don't know whose decision it was, whether Gabriel pushed for it or whether Wenger wanted him out. But yeah, it is a shame to go, because I know he's a bit erratic at times, but always quite amusing to watch. If nothing else, and 10 million doesn't seem a huge amount for anybody now.
It doesn't, not yeah. And I must admit, I hadn't realised Jenkinson had gone on loan until just before we started doing this. So he's been off to Birmingham. Pete, any thoughts on Gabriel before we move on?
Oh, I'm not going to miss him too much.
Well, I hope he's not going to listen to that bit.
I've actually got a better memory of his irrationality than he has had.
I'm not hugely upset he's gone, I must be honest, but it just seems, given the situation, it seemed a bit of an odd one to happen at this time. That was all.
Well, particularly if it is getting us some money with which to dip into the transfer market and for something else, then I don't think it's a bad thing.
No,
it probably is. Just, but should that 10 million be spent wisely somewhere else, then I think it's an excellent move.
It could be spent on a transfer fee, or of course wages, which might be the other way of looking at it. So, all right, well, it's time to move on then. I should mention if I'm reading my information correctly, the Europa League group stage draw takes place on Thursday or Friday. I think it's Friday. So we'll find out. We can chat about that next week. And not that I'm expecting us to necessarily have particularly good knowledge of all of the Europa League teams, but we can give it a go. I won't ask for predictions or preferences, because I must admit, I don't think we even know who's in it yet, do we? Because the second legs of the qualifying stuff still to take place this week. So we will leave that. Right. 2 predictions to the next game. So first of all, a look back at the Stoke predictions. We can do this pretty quickly. We all predicted Arsenal wins, so none of us score any points. That's pretty easy. Liverpool away coming up on Sunday afternoon at 4:00. Liverpool, what have they got? They've won 1 and drawn 1, haven't they, of their 2 games? They're at home, of course, for the second week in a row. I think that's all to do with West Ham having to be away for 3 games or something. I can't quite remember why it's not being done sort of fairly, but that's not our problem. Given it's a fairly big game, you can have a couple of lines or more if you like on this one, but we'll get a prediction as well from you if we could. I went first last week, so I think we'll have... Who are we going to have? We'll have Pete first this week. And of course it doesn't matter, we can all copy predictions if we want to, unless someone's really going to do it very very tactically towards the end of the season. But we're not there yet. Pete, any thoughts on the game and a prediction, please?
Well, I won't go 4-3 again, because that's not working.
Wait, hang on,
well.
using your theory, you should be going for 1-0 to Liverpool, shouldn't you?
Should be going for 1-0 to Liverpool, yes. But I'm stepping away from that. Really difficult one to call, because Liverpool are so Arsenal. It's quite unbelievable, isn't it? So I'm prediction wise, I think it will be a high scoring game. So actually, I'm tempted to go for 4-3 again. I'll go 3-2 Arsenal. You'll
go for an Arsenal win, 3-2. We do have some very interesting at Liverpool, don't we? There does often seem to be a lot of goals. Not always the right way for us, but that has been the case in the past. Matt, what are your thoughts on the game and a prediction, please?
Whenever I think of us playing Liverpool away, I just always seem to think we're 3-0 down after 20 minutes. I think Koscielny should be back. I don't know if Mertesacker's ever going to recover from this cut above his head.
It did look better last week, I thought, actually. Not that that's particularly important, but it did seem to have, there seems a bit of healing going on.
Must be the worst cut in the world. It's probably milking it, but this could be anything from an Arsenal win to us losing 6-0. And I don't know what's going to happen. Unfortunately, I care about this prediction league too much to waste points by blind optimism. So unfortunately, I was tempted with 3-1 again, because I've gone for that, but it's not working. So I will go 2-1 Liverpool and make myself really unpopular.
2-1 Liverpool. Well, I think we probably all. If I know, I haven't known you for quite so long, but I've known Pete a few years. I think we all understand the competitive nature. So I don't think we. Yes. There may be people listening who aren't impressed, but I completely understand it. Well, this is interesting because I'm going for 2-2. So somebody will score some points next week in our prediction league. I'm sort of the same as both of you. this could go anyway. I liked Pete's comment about Liverpool being very Arsenal, or indeed Arsenal being very Liverpool, I suppose. Yeah, you just don't know what you're going to get with these two teams at the moment. There's all sorts of things going on in both camps. Obviously, the natives are getting restless already at Arsenal, given what happened last year and after a defeat at Stoke. And Liverpool, the whole Coutinho thing. I mean, they might think it's settled, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if it carried on for a little bit longer, should we say, because that seems to be the nature of these things. So I sat and thought about it and thought, well, I'll go for the slightly simplistic option of not being able to tell the difference between the two, so I'll go for 2-2. So that's what I've gone for. So all right, we've got the bases covered there. So somebody will take a lead in the prediction competition next week. Oh, unless Unless I get it exactly, unless we win, but not by 3-2. Yeah, then we'll all be level. That's right. See, you're already there, aren't you? You already.
Oh yeah.
He's worked it out.
Already sorting out all the details. All right. Well, look, we'll leave it there then, because I think unless anyone else has anything else to say, we will leave this and see you next week. After which we'll have a little break, because there is indeed an international break after the Liverpool game, which might be so nice if we could get a decent result in that game, and I'd almost think a draw might be a decent result given the way we've played against Stoke. All right then, so we will be back next week to mull over that one. So for the moment, Pete, thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt. That's helped take my mind off going back to work tomorrow.
Oh, good. The fact you've got an extra day next week, there you go. That's good news. And Matt, thank you very much to you.
Thank you. That's brought all the misery of Saturday come rushing back.
Oh dear, I think we can't please everyone. But well, hopefully people will have a nice week doing other stuff, and then maybe the sun will come out, although it doesn't look very likely at the moment. But thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back next week. Take care, bye-bye.